and welcome to the latest edition of the KOFISI Connect podcast. It's been a tough time for business and business leaders during the past few years, faced with the challenges brought on by the pandemic. Some colleagues left isolated, working from home. Businesses had to rapidly evolve and adapt to new ways of working, more specifically the well-being of their workers. With me in the KOFISI 9 podcast studio today is Bbanga. Hello, Derek.
Hello, Jordan.
Who for years has been advocating a softer approach to running business, working with professionals to improve their emotional intelligence, communication and soft skills to get the best out of employees, bringing, I'd say, more empathy into the workplace to create a better work culture. Thank you so much for coming, Derek. I'm excited because this podcast is just a taster of more to come, because of course we're hosting a series of talks by you at KOFISI, which start in October. We'll talk about that a little later. Firstly, Derek, tell me about some of the challenges you've seen facing professionals coming out of COVID.
Yes, well, if there is one thing that the last 2 years or so has shown us, is that a rapid change in terms of how teams were operating was completely different from anything we've ever seen. People working from home, working remotely. We had leaders who were trying to lead their teams remotely, and emotions played a significant role in this. And we saw a lot of people were getting stressed out. There was a lot of burnout. There was a lot of people who were quitting their jobs, who were trying to be productive, working from different places. And so the way that we ran our businesses, particularly if you're a leader, completely changed from the way we had done it before.
You were telling a little bit earlier about this new symptom of COVID in the business world. You called it quiet quitting. I've noticed that a lot on LinkedIn. Can you just explain a little bit more about what it is?
Yeah, so that's a phenomenon that we've seen recently, Georgia, where employees have decided that they are not necessarily going to give 100% when they come to work. So somebody might be at work and they may decide to leave early, for example, or not complete a project and not give their all simply because they don't feel motivated to, or maybe their relationship with their team leader or their boss is different. And so we're seeing this increasingly affecting companies' productivity. People are just showing up but not showing up as either their authentic selves or showing up fully to their work. And that term has been called quiet quitting. Yeah.
Businesses, in essence, are having to work a lot harder to kind of engage employees. I mean, we are. One of the things that we've been writing about on LinkedIn is that we have to create a work environment that's more engaging, is more conducive. We're having to pull people out from out of their homes. So, to make sure that this is an attractive kind of place to be. Yeah. I suppose that what you're saying is the same thing happening on an emotional level as well.
One of the things you'd want from somebody who's part of your team is to be able to, maybe go above and beyond, say, their job description. And that could be something as simple as answering a message or a text after working hours. With this phenomenon of quiet quitting, people have completely refused to engage at all, have anything to do with work that requires them to do just that little bit extra. And part of equipping leaders with some of these emotional intelligence traits, like you've mentioned, like empathy or gratitude or providing psychological safety for their employees, is to motivate their work staff, to allow people to say that I want to do more than is the bare minimum in order for the organization to be successful.
Yes, it's a case of them not wanting to go above and beyond, is it? Because they don't feel that they kind of need to or should, or, why should they?
Exactly.
Which is really bad for business.
Oh, absolutely. It affects the bottom line. Imagine if everybody just did the bare minimum. I mean, organizations wouldn't survive.
So lots of change then for business, which is historically sort of fairly difficult to kind of implement and to manage. Why do you think it's so difficult for businesses sometimes to kind of embrace the change that seems fairly obvious one to me?
Yeah, well, I think traditionally the way we have run companies, the way businesses have been successful, it's usually a top-down sort of leadership where the boss or the leader or the manager or the CEO, it's usually, their word is the final word, my way or the highway type of leadership. And a lot of organizations were successful for many years. Increasingly, as we've seen, and not just in the last 2 years, I think this decade, organizations like the World Economic Forum have shown that skills like empathy, skills like embracing everybody in the workplace, skills like being able to respond well to feedback. Actually, leaders need to bring to the table in order for them to work more successfully and get the best out of their teams. And the last 2 years has sort of accelerated the importance of these types of interpersonal skills.
And I suppose the more you understand your employees, the more you get to know your employees, the better you can put in place training sessions to kind of upskill the team and understand what their personal or career goals are. That fosters, I suppose, the loyalty that you were saying is that the quiet quitting is symptomatic of.
I mean, human resource is probably the most important thing that you have going for you in any organization. And if employees feel that you're not invested in them, that you're not taking care of their needs, that you don't care what goes on after work, then they're less likely to either show up fully and be more productive.
So you obviously work with companies in creating a better work environment and improving kind of work culture. What sort of impact, because I know that business leaders, anyone who's running a business here might be saying, well, that's all well and good, but actually what sort of result does it have? What impact does it really have on my business?
Well, I think the best equipped teams today are the ones who have employees or staff, so it could be leaders, it could be people right through the entire chain who are equipped with self-awareness. For example, who have self-management skills, who are resilient, who have a greater awareness of other people. And there is a return on the investment in these particular skills. So not just equipping them, but making sure that they are practiced and that people bring them to the table. And that has been the difference, I think, between organizations that have succeeded, certainly in the last 2 years, and ones that are sort of, still languishing, if I can use that term.
I mean, it's great to hear because it's something that we place a huge emphasis on with our staff as well. I mean, but we are constantly working and renovating, rejuvenating the sort of, we call it putting people first. Mm-hmm. And it's a new kind of concept that we've got kind of running throughout the whole of the business. How easy or difficult would you say it is to build into your business model?
It's interesting that you use the word model because the organization that I am practicing emotional intelligence with is called Genos, and they actually have the Genos model of emotional intelligence, which fits in really well with the business model of most organizations. And it starts, for example, with assessing the emotional competencies, if you will, of the people within the organization. So there's one for leadership, there's one for everybody else in the organization, and then based on those results, you can actually quantify, because when you say some of these things like empathy, trust, how do you quantify it? But you can actually give it a number, and if something can be quantified, then it can be moved, it can be changed, it can be increased. So if you're able to actually see that, maybe there are a few things that I need to do in order for me to increase trust with my team, or increase their psychological well-being, or increase empathy, or, how I respond to feedback, or anything along those lines, then you can actually work on it. And because it's a behavioral model, it's something that you can put into practice every day. And it can go from the mundane or the trivial, if you will, like making sure that you're saying good morning to certain people, because some people take that personally and it literally affects how productive they are, to, how you work on bigger or larger projects.
So EQ is the new IQ.
It absolutely, it's like a three-legged stool, if you will. You come to an organization, you definitely need to have your IQ. Maybe we're going to talk about academic qualifications and credentials and your technical expertise, but the third leg of that stool is absolutely EQ. It's a vital.
Which leads me neatly on, actually, because that's the first thing that you're going to be talking about in a series of masterclasses, which are starting in October at KOFISI 9, running through November, which I'm hugely excited about coming to. So the first one you've got is 27th of October, leading with emotional intelligence. And then later on in November is a more resilient you. Mm-hmm. And then the third leg to your stool is the learning how to develop inner calm with mindfulness, which all sound brilliant. Can you just explain a little about each topic and how business can kind of benefit from these masterclasses?
So the leading with emotional intelligence is specifically designed for people leaders. So it will sort of help empower them, even help them to thrive, how they can connect better with their teams. And really, it's going to help them drive better collaboration, engagement with the teams that they work with. And so it's a good foundation to sort of begin the series on. And we'll begin introducing some of the terms that are frequently used in emotional intelligence, like empathy and what they really mean, and trust and things like that. So it's a good sort of foundation.
Yeah, and then the leading, a more resilient you. We were talking about that earlier. But I definitely need that driving into work and dealing with some of the Matatu drivers. But what you said was very interesting, actually.
Right.
So could you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, a more resilient you. Boy, do we need that every day. And a more resilient you is literally about how you can flex that particular muscle every day. Resilience isn't something that's a one-off. You don't just buy it and all of a sudden you have it. It's something that you have to practice with every day. And every day we're thrown a different curveball or different challenges. You just mentioned matatus, So, you can't wish all the matatus off the road. They're going to be there. And, it could be one day they cut you off in traffic. The next day something happens. You've got to find tools and techniques of dealing with that. And the important thing, for example, using the matatu example, is that if you don't deal with that unhealthy emotion or unproductive emotion that the matatu elicits in you, you bring it to the office and then it affects your team. There's an absolute transfer of some of these unproductive emotions. So we're going to explore tools, techniques, things that you can do, practices that you can put into place, starting from early in the morning to late at night.
So the term "I've had a bad morning" should not exist in my vocabulary after a Derek Bbanga masterclass.
I would certainly hope so, yes. Or I've had a bad morning, but you know what? I have bounced back.
I have bounced back.
Yeah.
My afternoon is going to be the one that I had.
There you go.
I had envisaged it was going to be wonderful. So then the third talk is learning how to develop inner calm with mindfulness.
And I think all of us suffer from this, right? The racing brain, all of those tabs open, sort of a lack of focus, not being present. And if there is one thing today that's going to help you sort of be more successful, it's about having that inner calm where you are able to literally be present. It could be with a person, it could be with a team member, it could be a customer, it could be with a particular project, and sort of minimize the distractions. I mean, mentally and figuratively. So obviously you can shut off your phone and sort of be present in the moment, but your brain is also, flying around and being aware of your lack of awareness, if that makes sense. Yeah. And we'll delve into this a little bit.
Amazing.
And so we're going to introduce some techniques, everything from meditation to breathing to how you can focus on the present. So I think that will be really interesting for all of us. Yeah.
Which reminds me, we must have a look at our Wellbeing room at KOFISI 9, which is exactly dedicated for those kind of moments where you just need time out to sit and take two minutes to yourself. Yeah. Well, that's what. Well, if you want to come to any of Derek's masterclasses, you don't have to be a KOFISI member. That's very important. Anyone can join. So you just email memberevents@kofisi.africa or check out our social media pages, which will be running from October, just letting you know how you can join in. Derek, I know you're passionate about business. It's just fascinating to find out how you kind of got here, I suppose, because it's what you're dealing with is very forward thinking for businesses in Kenya. So tell me kind of a little bit what piqued your interest in terms of well-being and work culture and empathy and all that woo-woo, is to coin your phrase, not me.
Yes. Well, George, I want to share a story with you. I remember when I was repatriating, coming back to Kenya after spending some time living and working abroad, and I was at the airport, and I had to deal with the custom agent, who's checking my passport and all of that. And I remember looking at him. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and he okay, I'll be blunt. He was a little bit more than slightly disheveled, all right? Red eyes, bad breath, stains on his tie. And this was supposed to be sort of my big welcome back to the country. And I said, is this what everybody has to, be confronted with as they come in? And sort of a light bulb went in my head. And I said, well, maybe these are skills that they're not necessarily taught, or perhaps they just need a refresher or a reminder or something like that. And that sort of started my journey, creating my company Public Image, where we're helping professionals be seen, heard, and remembered for the right reasons, and then bringing in things like emotional intelligence. So that's sort of where it all began. It was one single encounter at the airport all those years ago.
Have you been back and found him sitting there? Has there been any change? Is the Kenyan Airports Authority one of your clients? Perhaps it should be.
Perhaps it should be. I've dealt with them sort of not directly. I can safely say that my experience, having flown out and been back into the country, is a little feel better
improved.
and more improved
Yeah.
than it was with that initial encounter.
Thank you, Derek. That's some amazing business insights here, and I can't wait to hear more of your expertise from in your series of talks, which start October the 27th at KOFISI 9, with 2 more in November. Please come. Email memberevents@kofisi.africa for your ticket. Thank you so much for your time, Derek. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks. Looking forward to it.